Well, many thanks to Patricia Conte for that report. Well, to further discuss the issue, we have with us in the studios this morning John Caulker, who is the Executive Director of Fambul Talk International. And we also have with us Libby Hoffman, who is the President for Catalyst for Peace. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen,
Good morning.
and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you for having us. We start off with you, John Caulker, Executive Director of Fambul Talk International. We've known Fambul Talk for bringing peace to communities, especially those that have been divided. So what's the rationale behind this particular engagement?
Thank you very much. Fambul Talk over the last 8 to 9 years, we focused our NIG, our resources, working at the community level. But we also realized during the fight against Ebola that you need to build a bridge between the community and policymakers. Therefore, we worked very hard with other organizations. We created a network called Bridging Communities Network. But at the end of the Ebola, we went back to our communities to consult with them. How can we build sustainable relationship with policymakers? And also, what have we learned from the post-war recovery that we should try to avoid during the post-Ebola and ongoing development? So that's what led to the development of the People's Planning Process. The People's Planning Process is a process that consults with villages, sections to come up with a chiefdom People's Planning Process that we normally present to the district council and other stakeholders. It was at one of those events, which started in Kailam, later Kwenodogo and Moyamba, that people suggested that it would be good to have an inclusive structure that will focus on helping communities to realize their dreams, sort of for them to meet their needs. So that's how we get to sort of start this process, which is inclusive community peace and development structure, which is a structure that encompasses all the district councils, the district office, the paramount chiefs, civil society, youth representatives, women representatives, and even the disabled. And the idea is for them to come together to discuss how to move forward with a community-centered development process or programs within their respective districts. Therefore, the last 3 days, we had the opportunity to learn and share our experiences from the 3 different districts as we prepare to roll out the process in other parts of the country.
So what were some of the issues discussed?
We realized how, it's hard to say how easy it is, but how realistic it was for communities to come together to facilitate, to sort of to address long-standing disputes. For example, in Kailan and Moyamba, where they've had long-standing disputes between the paramount chiefs and the councils. You know, that issue came up during the district stakeholders. And that was the first task given to the inclusive committee. But they were able over time to resolve that dispute, which had to do with taxes. You know, the paramount chiefs think that the councils are not working transparently. And the councils said the paramount chiefs are not paying their rebate from the local tax. So they've had that stalemate since 2009. And it's hurt the communities because when the council and paramount chiefs don't meet, I mean, there's no development or ongoing development across the district. So they were able to address that issue both in Moyamba and Kailang, where they agreed to work on percentages. They agreed to have an inclusive revenue mobilization process where the youths, the paramount chiefs, the women communities are all involved in ensuring that they all pay their taxes, and such taxes will be worked out on a percentage basis with the councils to ensure that there's ongoing development. One key factor that came up during this consultation, during these negotiations, we are all funds should be geared towards developing communities. The mandate of the council is to come up with development programs within the district. The paramount chiefs, they are tasked with developing their communities. So they all agree that the 40% will go towards developing chiefdom projects, and the 60% will be managed by the council. But at the end of the day, it's all about developing their communities. Also, youth issues. In Kailau, they had long-standing youth challenges for the last 3 years with their council. That was also resolved. And just the concept of inclusivity, where in youths for the first time feel they have a seat on the table. Paramount chiefs feel they have a seat on the table. You know, district officers, they all work together. What I found very interesting is how the work of the councils becomes smoothly driven at the district level, because they have collective desire to push for development within their district. So as a whole, I feel privileged to be part of this process, because it's all driven by the community and the stakeholders themselves. Let's pause there, Mr. Caulker, Executive Director of Fambul Talk, and bring in Libby Hoffman, who is the President for Catalyst for Peace. Tell us more about Catalyst for Peace. What have you been observing so far in Sierra Leone when we're talking about peace and development?
Well, one of our, the starting point of the way that we work, we're an operating and granting foundation based in the United States, and our purpose is to create space for those, or has been to create space for those most impacted by war and violence, to be the ones who get to lead in the recovery. And we've been working with John Caulker and Fambul Talk since the beginning of Fambul Talk 9 years ago, at the end of 2007, to try to create space for the ordinary Sierra Leoneans that were most impacted by the war to be the ones to lead in the rebuilding after, and to draw on their culture and their tradition in doing that. And one of the things that we've learned that I have learned in our work with Fambul Talk, and then now with the People's Planning process, is the incredible power of the community when it is whole. And what we have found is that the community is like a cup. And aid, whether it's aid that's supporting peace building and reconciliation, or aid that's supporting development, or aid that's supporting Ebola response and recovery, is like water. And water pouring into a cup, what we find is that it leaks right out because the cup is cracked. And the cup is the community. And what we've seen is that a lot of people that are providing aid, especially from the international community, don't even see the cup as an entity in and of itself, and they don't understand the work of how do you repair the cup. And what Fambul Talk has been doing is repairing the cup, repairing the community, and helping to rebuild the fabric of the community so that it can hold the water that comes in from the outside. And what we've seen is that when communities are repaired, when they're brought together, when they reconcile from the conflicts, when they learn how to come together and make decisions together that include all of the stakeholders in the community, that incredible things are possible. I think more than anything else, that's what I've observed in our work with Fambul Talk over the last 9 years, is that as the communities come together, they are capable of leading in their own, not only reconciliation and peace building, but development process.
So from what you've highlighted, what actually came out of the conference that you will say you learned?
Well, I think from this particular conference, what was reinforced for me is how powerful an example of a whole community that is saying what they want to do to lead in their own development is, and how much the leadership at the district level wants to support that. I was really impressed during this conference with how much all of the inclusive district peace and development committees learned from each other, how eager they were at the district level to take on new dimensions of their own leadership in creating space for the communities to lead the development process in their districts, and how willing the districts were to learn from each other. All of the district council chairmen took a great deal of authority for going forward and leading in growing the people's planning process across their district. They're not waiting for outside support. They want to go forward on their own even before anybody from the outside comes forward. And the degree of agency that people took across the district was inspiring. The other thing that really stood out to me is the willingness of people to work together across sectors, and how there's an understanding that if we work alone in our own individual ways, we will not accomplish as much. But when we come together and find out how to work together across all of our differences, then anything is possible. And there was a fantastic commitment to work together, not only across sectors in each district, but between and among the districts.
Okay, John Caulker, now we've heard from Libby Hoffman, who talked about the incredible power of communities and the willingness of the people. So you've been sounding the views or opinions of the ordinary people. What have you been discussing with them? What clearly came out from the people?
Well, I think just to add to what Libby said, it's just people have answers to their problems. You know, sometimes we tend to underestimate the power within these communities. What we have seen over this last couple of months, or close to a year now, is once you are able to repair the communities, once they come together, they are able to build health posts on their own with no outside support. They are able to dig a borehole on their own with no outside support. They are able to build a court barrier on their own. What we do, we don't give them money. We tell them from the start, we don't give them money. We don't have money to give you. What we can do is we'll work with you so that you are whole. We've seen how many chiefdom in Kwenadugu are able to build a very long bridge once they are together. You know, so what we have seen is people want to contribute. People want to be asked the question, what can you do? People want that space to feel belong. And that is the space that the people's planning process is creating. I also want to hastily say, the people's planning process is not, or the IDPDC, the inclusive committee, is not replacing any structure. We are rather just complementing existing structures. Now we are trying to discuss with the councils how we could integrate the ward development committees, who in principle are tasked with the development process at the village and sectional level. But we all know their challenges. So when we reach out to communities, we are able to create that space for them to become active. So we are not replacing any structure. The council's mandate is intact, the paramount chiefs, their mandate, and everyone is there. We are just creating the space for them to come together to find ways to work as a unit. I mean, what I also found very interesting, we know how challenging it is when you talk about the colors in Sierra Leone, the different political parties. But in that gathering, we saw the minister, we saw different political stakeholders, you know, like Chairman Bondafa is a strong member of the SLPP, but he was there with his whole self. I mean, we saw the chairman, I mean, the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development. He was there. He was so committed. I found that incredibly important to see a minister being so committed to listen to his people, to find a way to support the process. And in fact, he made a commitment that he will work very hard to establish an interministerial committee to see how we can work with the government of Sierra Leone to cascade the process in other districts. And we as Fambul Talk, we've made it clear we don't have the capacity to take the process across the country. We are looking for partners to work together. We have the skills. I mean, our 9 years experience at the community level, our now 1 to 2 years experience at the policy level, we can work with other organizations, other institutions to see how this process can be scaled up across the country.
Okay. Of what importance do you think this would be, bridging the gap between communities and policymakers?
It helps to cement the leakages. It helps to avoid duplication. We all know how, I mean, it's hard to say, but most of us, I mean, NGOs, civil society, our work stops where the road network stops. But this process, I mean, I owe it to my colleagues, my staff, that they are able to cover each and every village within the section. Some sections are like 20 villages, and they are far apart. They wake up at about 4 or 5 in the morning to reach out to these villages before they go to their farms. Sometimes they go there late in the evening. So it's important when people feel belong. It's important when you take the development process. You take people, you put them at the center of development process. And someone said, this is like a new Sierra Leone, where we are putting political differences aside and we put communities at the center of development. I mean, I'm yearning to see what will happen in the next 1 or 2 years, where the councils will incorporate fully the people's planning process as part of their development planning process. We are open to collaborating with them and other stakeholders. So, I mean, it's so important for me, as a Sierra Leonean, as someone who grew up in the village. I saw a woman from Pejebonge in Kailang district. I mean, for the first time, you can imagine sitting in the middle of such a conference. She could not even speak Creole. But when she had the opportunity to make a contribution in Mende, she was so animated, talking about what she has learned, about what they have been able to do on their own. So this is the type of space we as Fambul Talk and Catalyst for Peace want to create across the country. So people don't just say, the government, NGOs, but what can we do for ourselves? Okay,
John, we're still with you. I mean, what you're actually saying now, it's really quite interesting, especially creating a space for young people to meet with their leaders. I mean, making them become self-reliant, and with the kind of proposals that community leaders and their communities are actually putting forth. But what we are more concerned about is like a kind of monitoring or follow-up by Catalyst for Peace or Fambul Talk International. Is that going to be the end of everything? I mean, like, what are you going to do so far?
Well, you see, one thing I have learned, I've worked in the civil society context in Sierra Leone, I think for like 2 decades now, 20 years. And one thing I've learned is, don't think about monitoring or the legacy at the end. Think about this from the get-go. What we've seen is, this is not a Fambul Talk or Catalyst for Peace program. We are only initiating the process. This process is fully owned and led by the committees themselves. At the end of the day, I mean, I was so astounded when the chairman were saying, we as a district, this is our process. And at some point, we were drifted, talking about policies. How do we anchor this within the Ministry of Local Government? He said, hey, hold on. Let's bring the convention back. How do we improve our district? So it's not the ownership. So monitoring evaluation is built within the committees. They have monitors. They have a process to evaluate. I mean, they have a very huge ambition. What we will do is to guide them for it to be more realistic. To say, hey, hold on, start one activity at a time. But it's built in there. They have more focus.
Okay, before ever we come to Libby Hoffman, how would you feel if your initiation, I mean, just die a natural death?
I think we've crossed that stage. It will not die again. I mean, I've got that conversation a couple of times when we started Fambul Talk like 9 years ago. Oh, this is another Sierra Leone initiative. It's brilliant. It will die down after 1 year. We are still there, 9 years. And we are still committed to working with the people. I mean, we've maintained our relationship, though sometimes challenging with Catalyst for Peace. We have difficult and hard conversation. But what is important is we've maintained our partnership. It's in the interest of what we do. We have a common vision, how to get people at the center of development.
Libby, before going over to the text messages, tell us about the partnership, where it is at the moment, and what do you think we as a nation, that Sierra Leone stands to benefit from the projects or initiatives undertaken by Fambul Talk?
Well, I would just say, first of all, one of the things that we believe is that you can never make really long-term sustainable change without long-term commitment. And we have made a long-term commitment to be in Sierra Leone and to be working with Fambul Talk and to be accompanying the process. We use an approach called emergent design, where when you're trying to create space for local leadership, you don't know exactly how it's going to go. So you're facilitating a space and then seeing what emerges and seeing the potential that's there and what you can do to help support its growth. And so that process of emergent design over the long term really characterizes our partnership. And one of the things that's critical in that is creating spaces to learn as you go. Events unfold rapidly, and how do we learn from that so that we can support the growth? And that's a lot of what we work to create with our partnership, is the space to learn from the events as they're unfolding so that we can go forward and make the biggest impact over time.
Well, let's quickly run through the text messages. This very first one here reads, Fambul Talk has been very instrumental in reconciling communities, and it's coming from Amit G.
This one says that squabbles and grudges left behind by the Ebola scourge. How would you describe the impact of this inclusive engagement from Val?
Another one says, how would you assess your presence in the areas you operate regarding the people's participation?
John, almost every non-governmental organization is in trade for self-enrichment. You go into communities and urge the people to take ownership of their communities. You need to school other NGOs from forward.
Another one says, what's the national impact of the engagement, especially the training of peace mothers? And it's coming from Fine Boy. Mr. Caulker.
I mean, these are great text messages. I don't even know where to start. But all I would say is...
let's start with the self-enrichment. I mean, some people are actually concerned about NGOs taking to communities and their main motive is to enrich themselves.
Well, for us, what we believe is, there is an opportunity when you see people are able to lead a process, when they're able to do things for themselves, you are spiritually rich. And we are not talking about materialism, but that spiritual richness is what we look for. I mean, just in the community, people say, God will bless you. God will bless you. The acknowledgement. People say, we are on the road almost all the time. Most times, we almost we escape accident or so, but we think that is because of the blessings we get from the people. But again, we are open to working with other partners. We are not saying we are perfect. We are just doing our thing. We are doing our work. It's a process.
So as you continue your engagements with community people, what is that message that you're still sending out there to them, especially the districts you operate in?
The message is, this is your process. This is not a Fambul. You know, it's like when an organization goes to a community to build a school, and they do everything for themselves or by themselves. At the end of the day, they'll say that is a Fambul Talk school. That's not what we want. We don't want this process to be IDPDC is a Fambul Talk project. No, it's community owned. It's district owned. It's anchored in the councils. What we have seen from this process is just sometimes civil society, not just NGOs, we tend to shy away from government. And we have seen how important it is to relate with government when necessary, when you have the right partners. So we are giving it a try in working with the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, because we cannot do it on our own. We need the political will, which has been demonstrated over this last couple of days.
Okay, and finally, Libby, yes. What's going to be your message?
Well, I think the message is the answers are there. And our role is to simply facilitate the space for the answers that are there to come out. So it's a different, instead of coming in as the outside as the experts that think we have the answer and we're here to give it to you, the answers are there and we're here to learn from you. And that is incredibly enriching, as John was saying, incredibly gratifying to see individuals and communities live into their potential. I honestly don't think there's been anything more personally gratifying for me than to see people step into greater capacity for themselves and for their communities.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Libby Hoffman, President, Catalyst for Peace, and John Caulker, Executive Director of Fambul Talk International. Thanks for being part of our program.
Thank you
for having me.
The program is Wake Up Sierra Leone on Africa Young Voices Television. Remember to send in your comments on issues being discussed through text messages. Send them to the AfriCell short code 4488 from any AfriCell number and to 099101333 from any other network. We take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with another issue.